I have worked the outpost Tivan relay station for 11 years. I am not a soldier. I am not a diplomat. I am a signal technician. The kind of posting that goes to people who are competent enough not to lose the equipment and unremarkable enough that one worries about what they might do with the access. My job is to maintain the antenna array, log incoming traffic, forward anything addressed to the Kelvani Reach Administrative Cluster. Most days I log nothing of consequence: agricultural surveys, shipping manifests, the occasional military traffic, which I forward without reading. The day the Vithori warship Sunderer of the Pale Reach fired its emergency burst, I was recalibrating the sidelobe suppressors on Array 3. The suppressors were old. Most of the equipment at Outpost Tivan is old. The station was built during the early settlement period, when the Kelvani Reach was still mapping its outer edges, and the relay hardware has been patched and repatched across 4 administrations. The sidelobe on Array 3 had been running at about 6% of primary gain for 3 months, which is within tolerance. I had filed 3 maintenance requests. None of them had been acted on. When a transmission is strong enough and aimed close enough to the array's pointing axis, a 6% sidelobe can pick up a significant fraction of the signal. Usually, this produces a ghost trace in the log and nothing else. I note it, I attach a suppression flag, and I move on. The Vithori emergency burst was strong. Fleet Commander Derevek Sauls had fired it at full power on the standard Kelvani Reach emergency relay frequency, aimed at the relay cluster at Kelvar Station, which is the correct destination for a Vithori warship in distress in this sector. It was a reasonable thing to do. The Sunderer of the Pale Reach had taken a debris strike, a large fragment from the Tevan Belt collision that occurred 14 months ago, the one the navigation charts had not yet fully mapped. The strike had shredded the forward navigation array and damaged 3 crew compartments. They had 19 injured. The ship's medical database had been stored on a secondary drive cluster in the forward section. That cluster was gone. Fleet Commander Sauls did not know, and what I did not know until I ran the trace, was that the Kelvar Station relay had been offline for 6 days. A power coupling failure. The cluster had sent automated maintenance notices to the Reach Administrative Center. No one had updated the emergency routing tables, so the burst free hit the dead relay and scattered. I picked up the primary beam on Array 3 because Outpost Tivan happens to sit at a useful angle to Tivan Belt. I also picked up, via that 6% sidelobe, a harmonic secondary that had bled sideways from the main transmission, and that secondary fell directly onto the old Terran survey band frequency that Array 3 still monitors. Tivan Station was built during the joint survey period, 50 years ago, when the Reach and the early Terran deep grid had briefly coordinated on belt mapping. The Terran survey frequency had been kept active in the monitoring suite as a legacy accommodation. No one had decommissioned it. No one had used it in decades. I monitored it out of habit because the original station documentation said to, and I follow documentation. The sidelobe bleed onto the Terran survey frequency was faint, perhaps 9% of the burst's full signal. 9% of a full-power emergency transmission on an open-monitored channel is not nothing. I logged it. I attached the suppression flag. I forwarded the primary beam trace to the Kelvar Station routing queue, which was offline, and therefore ate the forward silently. I noted in my log that the emergency burst had failed to route to its destination. I filed a second flag on the routing table error. Then I went back to the sidelobe suppressor. 43 minutes later, I received a data package on the Terran survey frequency. This is the part I have tried to describe accurately in my official report, and have had difficulty doing so. Because the sequence of events does not map cleanly onto any category of incident I was trained to handle. The package arrived at standard Terran compressed data format, which I recognized from the joint survey documentation on file. It was addressed, in the header, to the originating emergency transponder identifier from the Sunderer of the Pale Reach. Whoever had sent it had parsed the bleed trace from the survey frequency, identified the transponder code, and built a reply addressed precisely to the ship that had fired the original burst. The covering note was brief. I have read it many times since, and I will reproduce it from memory as accurately as I can. Survey band relay at Outpost Tivan coordinates. Distress transponder Bled reached us on the open survey frequency. We have no patrol vessels in your sector. We are forwarding the following in lieu of ships. Contents: full navigational survey of the Terran Belt collision debris field, dated through 6 weeks ago, formatted for general compatibility in jest. 17,412 pages, medical database. Emergency trauma and surgical protocols, general compatibility format, no species-specific filtering applied. 6,291 pages. If this does not reach the originating vessel directly, please forward. We hope it is useful. There was no signature. There was a Terran deep grid relay identifier in the transmission header, which I confirmed matched the Earth deep grid architecture I had on file from the joint survey documentation. That was all. I sat with this for a moment longer than I should have. Then I forwarded the package to the sunderer of the Pale Reach on the emergency band, flagged urgent, and opened a comm line to Fleet Commander Sauls. He answered on the third ping, which told me the comm system was functional. His voice had the clipped, precise quality of a military officer managing a situation. Not panic, not desperation, the particular compression of a man who is counting his variables and does not want to waste time on any of them. I told him the Kelvar relay was offline and that his emergency burst had not routed to its destination. I told him that the burst had bled onto an old Terran survey frequency. I told him I had received a data package from the Terran deep grid in response to that bleed and had forwarded it to his ship. There was a pause. He asked me to repeat the last part. I repeated it. Another pause. I heard him moving, the sound of a console being accessed, a data package being opened. I waited. When he spoke again, some of the compression had changed. Not dramatically. He is a fleet commander. They are trained against dramatics. But there was something in it that I recognized as recalibration. The sound of a man updating his model of what he thought was happening. He said, "The navigation survey," I said yes, updated 6 weeks ago. "Covering the Terran Belt debris field," he said, "and the medical database," I said yes. 23,700 pages combined, general compatibility format, no specialist interpretation required. He was quiet for a moment. I heard him relay something to someone off comm. The ship's surgeon, I gathered from context. Then he came back on and asked me a question that I found, and still find, somewhat difficult to characterize. He asked me what category of entity sends a full navigation survey and a complete medical database in response to a distress call it was not supposed to receive when it has no ships to send. I told him I did not know how to answer that. He said he did not know how to answer it either. He said the updated navigation charts had just been confirmed as a match to debris field positions his own forward sensors had flagged as unknown. He said the medical database was already open on the surgeon's console. He said 19 crew members were going to receive better care in the next 4 hours than they would have received if the Kelvar relay had been operational, and he had reached a Kelvani Reach emergency tender in the standard time. He said this without inflection. He was not expressing gratitude in any register I would call conventional. He was reporting data. Then he asked me something else. He asked whether I knew if the Terran Deep Grid maintained this kind of archive as a standing practice, whether they compiled navigational data on other species sectors and medical databases in other species formats as a routine operational matter. I said I did not know. I said the joint survey documentation I had on file was 50 years old and was concerned with belt mapping cooperation, not medical databases. He said that he found it notable that the package contained no species-specific filtering, that the medical protocols covered a range of physiologies without requiring the recipient to specify which category they fell into, that someone had either anticipated a broad range of possible recipients or had written the database to be useful regardless of who received it. Both. He stopped there. I did not add anything. It did not seem like the moment for addition. Before he closed the line, he told me he would be filing his after-action report with the Kelvani Reach Administrative Center and would include a formal notation regarding the relay routing table failure. He said he would also include a notation regarding the Terran transmission. He said he was uncertain which administrative category the notation belonged in, but that he intended to include it regardless. I told him that seemed appropriate. After he closed the line, I sat in the relay station for a while before going back to the sidelobe suppressor. Terran belt survey was in the package too, not just the debris field update, but the full foundational survey. 40 years of belt mapping, indexed and cross-referenced. I looked at it for a while before I remembered what I was supposed to be doing. I completed the suppressor recalibration. I filed my maintenance report. At the bottom of the report, where the notes field allows for additional remarks, I wrote that the Terran survey frequency at Array 3 should be preserved in the active monitoring suite and not decommissioned. I did not explain why. I did not know at that point how to explain it concisely. I wrote it anyway and submitted the report, and I have not heard back from anyone questioning the recommendation. The frequency is still active. I check it every morning before I start the day's work. The way you check a door to make sure it is still closed, or a channel to make sure it is still open. It amounts to the same thing.